Well, high-end rim manufacturers have identified that tubeless and hookless rims are putting more pressure on the rims. Well, let's ask ourselves, why and how is this actually a problem after we roll that intro? Well, Rovale and DT Swiss have identified that tubeless and hookless rims put more pressure onto the rim. Now, why this is a problem is because that extra pressure is causing the spokes to detension, and if the tension comes off too much or goes off completely, you can actually have a fatiguing of the spoke as the wheel rotates and the tension comes off, and then you can have a premature failure of the spokes, causing the wheel to fail. So why is this happening when you don't run a tube inside your tyre? Now, the manufacturers are actually saying that they believe it's because when you don't have a tube, you're getting a bigger area of pressure on the rim, and more force across a bigger area equals more force. So this is causing the spokes to detension. But I have my own personal opinion on that. I think the tube, because it is a membrane and it has elasticity, it's transferring the forces through that membrane back to the tyre. And also the other thing we need to remember as well is a tubeless and hookless tyre has less flex in it because they have to make the sidewalls unflexible for it to stay on the rim. And that's just part of the design of a hookless and tubeless rim. So what we're having in the industry now is a little bit of a backstepping or backflipping on these tubeless and hookless rims. And Rovale, who are part of Specialized, are so concerned about this that they're basically recommending that all of their rims be run with tubes in. Now, if you watch another YouTuber, GC Performance, he does some really great videos on new releases of products. He's out there in Florida, so go check him out. He actually has mentioned this in his videos that the Rovale wheels need to be run with tubes. So this to me leaves a real question mark over these new technologies that they're building into these rims. So where does it leave us, the consumers, buying these new bikes and these new technologies? Well, what's basically happening now is that the manufacturers' eyes are saying, one, you need to run a tube in the tyre, or two, you need to run a tubeless or hookless tyre. If you remove the tube out, you need to run it at a lower pressure so there is not the same forces on the rim. Now, I've done a number of videos about wider tyres and lower pressures and how I feel that this is not really a move forward for road racing bikes, because even though you may say that the rolling resistance on rough surface is improved, your aerodynamics and smooth surfaces, the actual performance is decreased. So yes, there is some trade-offs if you want to ride your bike on rougher roads or poor quality roads, but as a pure out racing bike, you're actually limiting some of the performance advantages of that bike. Now, there is some mixed responses to how you can manage this detensioning of the spokes on these rims. And some people are saying that you should just run them at lower pressures or run a tube. And some other people are actually saying that what you should do is mount the tyre and then check the tensions and retension them. But the problem is with that is that's another step when you buy a wheel, or if you want to put a new tyre on. Us, the consumer, are not always skilled at retensioning wheels because, you know, they're dished and they have different tensions on the different sides because there's different angles because of the dishness. And then you've got elliptical adjustment, and you've also got equal tension adjustments, you've got roundness adjustment, and there's a lot of adjustments to be aware of if you've never actually built a wheel before or tensioned a wheel. So that means that every time you put a new tyre on your rim, you need to take it back to a bike shop or you need to take it back to a wheel builder to have the tensions checked and retensioned. But some of the manufacturers are actually against this idea, because if you're adding tension to the wheel, then when you take the tyre off or as the tyre rotates, there could be a bigger variance in the tension that the spoke is handling, and this may be beyond the actual manufacturer specifications related to that spoke. So there's a lot of controversy on how that should be managed, and obviously companies like Specialized, Rovale have gone the way that you must always run a tube on their rims. Well, in conclusion, this leaves a bit of a question mark for us, the consumers, because this new technology that's coming out, now the manufacturers have had a bit of a backstep or a backflip or whatever you want to call it, and Specialized Rovale haven't actually got enough confidence in their product to recommend them to be run tubeless. They're actually saying you've got to run a tube in every one of their rims. And then we've also got other brands like DT Swiss, which have a D rating if you want to run it tubeless, so you have to lower your pressure. Now, this to me leaves a little bit of a concern for us, the consumers. And what I would recommend is, if you can, run a tube in all of your tubeless tyres, because the manufacturers have only recently identified this issue. Now, the other problem that I believe that they're not talking about is that with a disc brake wheel, you're actually putting extra forces through those spokes compared to a rim brake. I don't know if people realise, but a rim brake bike doesn't put the braking forces through the spokes, whilst a disc brake bike does, because it's mounted on the hub. That's why you have to have cross spoking on the front wheel as well as the back wheel with a disc brake bike. Now, when you're actually braking and you're putting these loads, these significant loads of the braking forces through the spokes, and then you've got this tubeless rim that's detensioning the spokes, you could have a spoke failure or even a complete failure of the wheel. And, you know, this obviously, especially if it happened on the front wheel, could be very, very dangerous. And we've also had problems with the rear wheel, because not only with a rim brake bike is the forces being of your drivetrain forces, you also have braking forces which act in the opposite direction. So you have a tensioning, detensioning, tensioning, detensioning of different spokes, which wheel builders have shown to have fatigued the wheels much quicker. Well, anyway, guys, leave your comments down below what you think about this. And all I can recommend is, if you can, run a tube. But there's a big question mark about these new technologies. And I mention this quite often. I think the bicycle industry is rushing forward far too quickly, and they're not perfecting a lot of these technologies, and then assuming that this is the new technology and this is how the new bikes are going to come. They're going to come with disc brakes, they're going to come with hookless rims, they're going to come with integrated stem systems, and they haven't really perfected them. So guys, you tell me what you think down below, and I will see you next video. Cheers.